Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Holman, and I am the Clinical Product Marketing Director here at Riverside Insights. I'd like to thank you for taking time today to join us for our webinar, An Introduction to the Behavior Intervention Monitoring System, how the BIMAS-2 can help schools screen and monitor students' behavior and social emotional wellness. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Achilles Bardos. Dr. Bardos is co-author of the BIMAS-2 and recently retired as professor in the Department of School Psychology at the University of Northern Colorado. His teaching and research interests included educational and psychological assessments, program evaluation, and computer applications in psychology. He has published many articles and book chapters and presented over 200 papers and workshops at national and international conferences. Dr. Bardos co-authored several assessments in intelligence, behavior, and achievement. We're excited to welcome you today. And during the presentation, please leave any questions you may have in the Q&A box. A recording of today's presentation and certificate of attendance will be sent to all registrants. And just so that you know, I'm going to put a link in the chat feature of the control panel with a link to all of the handouts, since there were numerous handouts for today's session that wouldn't all fit into the attachment section. So look for those as well, and they will be included in the follow-up email. And without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Bardos.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Excellent, excellent. Greetings, everyone. Greetings from Colorado. I'm Achilles Bardos, ex-professor, I should say, at the University of Northern Colorado, enjoying my retirement now by working only about 100 hours a week instead of 120. So I hope everyone is having a good day. We're gonna spend the next hour, the first few minutes, we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the work and philosophy behind the work that we have done with the BIMAS, and then we'll follow up with a quick little demo. Hopefully things will go smoothly, because I haven't been using the GoToWebinar for quite some time. So let's see. Well, let's start with a little disclaimer. As Sarah said, I'm the co-author of the BIMAS, which means then I receive some royalties. And of course, I have a very objective opinion about the work, but I will leave up to your judgment and education to make that kind of a decision and judgment. I'm also serving as the CEO, the publisher of the BIMAS. That's my new activity, along with some other assessment instruments that we publish. And Riverside Inside is distributing the BIMAS for us. So Sarah will be your contact person if you want to follow up. In terms of my background, I started as an elementary school teacher, and with interest after in Greece, and then with the interest in learning disabilities and emotional and behavioral situations and conditions, I came to the United States and finished my work under Jack Naglieri at Ohio State a long time ago, and served as a professor of school psychology for 34 years. I want to stop here and appreciate and say thank you to Sarah from Riverside Insights and all of her team who made this presentation possible. So there are a few thoughts that I would like to share with you about, mental health and SEL and so forth. And one thing that has been bugging me personally over the last few years is this debate that we have in our field about social emotional learning and mental health. And to be honest with you, I believe some of these debate and arguments are wrong debates from my perspective. You hear things such as strength assessment versus deficit-based assessment. And sometimes I wonder, so if it's not strength, what do you call it in a strength-based assessment? Is it then a deficit? Or, and I find some of these discussions, to be honest with you, quite silly, because I think there are more important things that somebody has to be entertaining in this discussion. And I will come forward and share with you my perspective about social emotional skills, what I call, which are really competencies that we all have. Competencies such as empathy, managing our emotions, connecting with others, being mindful, and so forth. These are all the competencies. This is the ammunition that we all carry in life so that we can overcome life's, I guess, adversities. And of course, all of this work has been placed quite often in frameworks, and the most famous one that is being discussed right now is the CASTLE framework. That's the most referenced one. So we have skills, we have competencies. When an entity, whoever that entity might be, decides that our skills, as they are being demonstrated through our behaviors, are not really up to par, then what we do is we intervene. And how we intervene is we intervene with new learnings. And these new learnings is what I call the social emotional learning. So I make it a little separation between a skill and also a learning, a curricula or other kinds of activities. Now, on the other end, mental health refers to behaviors and psychological symptoms that children, adults, or whatever, when they are dealing with all of these adversities in life, are we able to really learn and succeed and deal with these challenges? And some people do, some people do not do that. And things such as anxieties, depression, other trauma experiences. So there is a little balance there. So the argument about whether it is social emotional learning versus a deficit mental health approach, I think it's not really one that leads us to good outcomes in terms of the discussion, but it's good to keep it in mind as we move forward. Now, most recently, we all experience as a planet, I should say, this business of the COVID pandemic. And I was trying to think about what can we learn in the medical profession, what can we learn in the mental health profession from the medical health professions. So the COVID virus appears. And all of a sudden, everyone is doing something, documents its need, and with very, very frequent testings in the general population. And we discover that we have a problem, a very serious problem. In the past, I used to say to my students in classes, when the medical profession faces something like this, within 2 to 3 minutes, the CDC has everything under control. Well, I was wrong this time. It took them about 3 years. How did they do it? They went into and they did initial, the screening data. All of this data were documenting the need, and they were documenting the need for an intervention. Of course, we had no interventions. So what we did is we did the most rational thing. We said masks for everyone, masks everywhere. We closed business except some of the very, very essential supermarkets, Home Depot, Lowe's, all of these places were still operating, but they were all saying, schools also, they were shut down. And all of these places, when they were operating, people were saying, watch the distance with each other. And I was thinking, this sounded like a tier 1 types of interventions, because they were really everything for everyone in the population that we had. Then, of course, comes the intervention component. And those who were infected by the virus, what do we say to them? Stay home. Do not interact with other people, even with your very, very own people in the house. Stay as far away as you can. Monitor your fever. And if really, and also, as we were going through, we had some vaccinations. And of course, some of these things worked for some people, the vaccinations. They stayed home. They went through this 2 weeks of 3 weeks of the virus, and everything was going okay. But some, the tier 3, they required some kind of a hospitalization. Now, if we look in the mental health, in the mental health field, who do we have to give us this type of general population type of data, the state of affairs, in other words, of all of this? Well, we have surveys, and the CDC, probably the most, I will say, scientific source of the data, the Center for Disease Control, has been giving us statistics about what is going on in the general population in terms of mental health and students in particular. As you probably have seen for all the articles that you have written, that you've read, there isn't one of them that doesn't refer to CDC and the 1 in 5 students are possibly experiencing some mental health issues, and or 20% of them. Then, as a profession, around the 98 to 2000 and so forth, we started discussing an RTI approach, and the MTSS framework started appearing a bit later on, where we said, you know what, it's all, everyone has some kind of a need, and the general population has an X number of needs. There are going to be some people who are going to have a little bit more of a need, and some others will have intensive need for services. So we started promoting tier 1 interventions. And in the mental health field, you know, as far as our conversation here, or the topic of our conversation, we had SEL curricula, for example, that were introduced as interventions for all. And this, if you Google today, you will find out about SEL curricula. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. But unfortunately, many of them, or I should say the majority of them, are lacking evidence of their effectiveness. However, you will see lots of glitzy websites, you will see spinning wheels, you will see lots of claims, but really the scientific evidence of their effectiveness is still missing. Now, while all of these things are happening, and we are hoping for the best outcome, and we know that the SEL promotes mental wellness, psychological wellness, we still know from the research that about 30 to 40% of young people today are experiencing these negative mental health issues. Now, legitimately, if you go to the left side of the screen where we talked about what did they do? Well, they found out who they were, the people with the COVID. They did some screening. So if we go to the side of the mental health wellness, we will say, who are these 30 to 40% of young people that will need immediate action from us so that we can address the needs that they have? And that's why we are the topic of today's conversation and presentation, universal screening. What is it that we're screening for? How can we find out the students who are really asking for the assistance that they might be needing? So, I don't know what happened in here, but we'll come back to it. All right. So let's look at the surveys from the CDC. Look at this one, for example, persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. We have an overall 42% of the population reporting this particular incidence. So when you're thinking about why am I doing the screening should be able to identify this 42% or a close number to that that is being reported in anonymous surveys by CDC. Let's look at the other one, poor mental health. These are actually directly from their report in 2021. 29% poor mental health. Seriously considering attempting suicide, 22%. So when we are actually doing for screening, shouldn't we be addressing some of these things as part of the screening? And I think we should. So the purpose of the screening will be to evaluate everyone, all of people, or the majority of people, I should say, within a certain group, such as in a public school. We will be assessing their social emotional behaviors so we can determine maybe at the district level, maybe at the building level, at the classroom level, what is the overall social emotional skills and competencies that the kids have. Identify behaviors, emotions, and feelings that are really going to lead to problematic behaviors. Now, once we do this kind of screening, legitimately, the next natural or I guess logical second step would be to say, are we going to evaluate and see if whatever we do is really effective? If we are making an investment for the general population, the entire school district, what is the return in our investment on that one? We say usually to see that it might take up to 3 years in order for a school district to see the return of that investment in the SEL. But remember, the 1 in 5 kids, they need to be identified, not in 3 years from now. They need to be identified today so that we can take action and address them, or address their needs. So we need to have interventions with small groups, and interventions for individual students, and also be able to monitor the effectiveness of these interventions in these small or individual students. So what do we want to accomplish with screening? Why assess, for example, SEL skills? We know that SEL, probably the SEL curriculum, is probably the best thing we can do. We hope that will enhance the skills that kids have. Now, how soon will we see the impact? As I said, maybe 2 to 3 years. Then legitimately, again, we will ask the question, so about the tools that we're going to be engaging to come up with all of this data. What are they? How were they developed? Is there a rationale and a theory, or do they just simply utilize what is trendy these days to talk about the castle constructs of such and such? I said, that's fine, that's great, but what is the, are we going to apply any I guess, criteria to make that kind of a judgment the same way we apply the criteria when we use intelligence, achievement, other behavioral scales? We should hold these instruments, I guess, accountable to all of the psychometrics that we'd be expecting from any other assessment tool that we have. So do they offer any evidence for the claims they make? That's a validity question. And just mentioning that I'm connected to the CASEL framework doesn't necessarily mean that it cuts to the point of here is evidence for psychometrics. The other thing that I think we should be paying attention is not to confuse instruction and assessment, although the two are related. And especially this concept of strength-based assessment. Strength-based instruction should be strength-based. The other aspect of assessment, I think it might be something that we can spend hours debating whether that's more important than anything else, but it does have good face validity. Who doesn't want to talk about positive psychology and positive outcomes? But if you hear that kind of a claim, ask for the validity evidence for that one. You will find out that mostly is faith-based, what I call, versus science. Now, why assess on the other side for mental health? Well, we already said it. CDC reports 1 in 5 students, or 20% of them. So who are they? When and how are we going to find them? What kind of behaviors does the literature say usually these students exhibit? And it's not just internalizing behaviors, externalizing behaviors, things that we know in psychology for over, I should say, 100 such years. We know about interventions in some of these conditions and so forth. So, and it's not also the CDC, by the way. The social media is loaded with information about the challenges that kids are facing today. Growing depressed, teenage suicide, and so forth. Let's see, trying to go to the next slide, and for some reason it doesn't want to go. Oh, yeah, you are. So we talked about the CASEL framework. And I say here, let's look beyond labels, colors, and rhetorics about the CASEL framework. What is it? It's a good framework. It's a good framework that will lead us to good days ahead. What is the CASEL organization claim? It says, for example, the SEL approach is not just curriculum. It involves in curriculum, but also involves school climate, involves integration of academics, curricula, the culture of the school. All of these things together are really making up the SEL in the social emotional learning within an organization. And the CASEL framework says, you're going to have some short-term outcomes. What are these outcomes? Well, first of all, you're going to have to be teaching these 5 competencies areas or related to those 5 competencies areas. So how are you going to teach? Well, one approach to take is to just give it to everybody, which is good. But we also know that many people will react differently to that same dosage of SEL skills. So we're going to have, for example, we have the need to know what kind of skills are we starting with. In order to treat something, in order to improve something, you need to know from where you are starting. That's kind of the short-term outcome. Now, of course, the CASEL framework doesn't say increase the SEL skills. It says outcomes, measurable outcomes should reflect a change in positive social behavior. fewer conduct problems, less emotional distress, improve academic performance. So our instruments, I think, if you were to measure the effectiveness of what we do, should be addressing some of these things that this little chart is actually showing us here. So when we talk about some of the work that we've been doing with the BIMAS and the CASEL framework, I need to tell you that we've never interacted with the CASEL framework authors or any of the researchers or whatever. We were working independently. So we said, yes, SEL approaches should be there. Short-term outcomes, well, we should have a way to measure this. And when we measure them, we should be able to know where to start, where we are standing with all of these things, include across these five competencies and an overall scale. And afterwards, when we talk about long-term outcomes, we should have also an instrument that will measure reliably and validate those outcomes. And when we look into the BIMAS, the work that we've been doing, we were surprised to find out that what we call conduct, social skills, negative effect, academic scales were pretty much parallel to what the CASEL framework was all about. So these are the measurable, objective ways for you to know if an SEL intervention or an SEL initiative in your building really is paying off. Now, people also talk about, what should these screening measures include? Well, they should be, we all know, reliable and valid. Reliability. I always say reliability is pretty much easy to establish with about 8 or 9 questions. The validity is a different kind of a monster that we have to deal with. The quality of inferences you are making from the test scores in an assessment. That's what validity is all about. What do the authors claim and what evidence do they present for the quality of inferences you are making from this? And we say, well, they need to be actionable data. That's the claim that we make. And in order to support that, we have provided evidence to show that. These authors here in Dr. Walker's and Gresham's book say that they should be sensitive to short-term changes in behavior, not to wait 3 years to find out if your SEL actually program is working, but to be able to tell in very short periods of time if something that you do is really effective. And in our work here, we utilize the work by my colleague, Dr. Scott Meyer from University of Buffalo, who spent all of his pretty much professional life dealing with building intervention-sensitive items. And these are the items that will change in response to a psychotherapeutic intervention and behave theoretically as one is expecting to behave, as an item expects to behave, or a behavior. And if there is no intervention, you shouldn't be seeing any changes. So, and the intervention, and I'll go back to this thing here, it says should be administered repeatedly in short periods of time. So it should not be an 180 item rating scale. It should be something very, very short. Everybody loves short surveys. How short then a survey should be before losing even any credibility? Some people say, well, you can use 8, 10, 12 items and that should be sufficient enough. And then I will say, fine, it might be reliable, but ask the question. So what kind of data do you get from there for the general population? And does this assessment really reflect and can provide actionable data? Another criteria here, it says that it does not require a great deal of teacher training. And we shouldn't really be requiring and putting more and more to the teachers. It should be something very, very simple in terms of the administration and also perhaps for some of the data interpretation. The next point is a very important one. It should not be intervention specific. There are lots of people out there who will say, here is my SEL curricula, and here is how I'm going to measure it, and I'm going to tell you if really the curriculum made a difference in your SEL environment in your school. No. You don't go to the medical center and say, I would like to take an x-ray, but I want that x-ray machine to be made by GE or LG or whatever, because the intervention could include aspirin, Tylenol, this and that, all kinds of medications. Same thing similar happens in the SEL environment at school. It's not just your SEL curricula. It's really the environment we talked about, the relationship between students and teachers, with administration, with the parents, with the community, all of these things together are making up the SEL environment. So the instrument that you will use should be capable enough to detect a change, and it should not be tied to a specific intervention. And of course, we say that, but the question then becomes, so how did you do it with a castle and the BIMAS? Because we started a BIMAS by building on the concept of internalizing, externalizing, and so forth behaviors, the traditional psychology perspective. And then all of a sudden, 4 years later, we said, well, you can look at this data from a different perspective. So what we did is we looked into the BIMAS items. We looked at some of the constructs that were being discussed in a specific curriculum. This was, for example, the second step curricula, and we were able to map behaviors to constructs as they were discussed in some of these curricula. So, the SEL movement, as I say here, will definitely make a difference, and the SEL skills are essentials. They're probably the best thing that we can offer kids right now to life's adversities, to all kids. But we should be looking a little bit more beyond this rhetorics and catchy, trendy phrases and impressive frameworks with dash wheels and dashboard wheels and so forth. Nice mechanics, to have all of this dashboard, but are they really essential? For example, school districts that I interacted with have adopted platforms that bring this piece of data, this piece of data, this piece of data, so that they can have the convenience of having all the data in one spot. And I go like, that's nice. That's a nice mechanical thing, but is it really essential? Is there really evidence that this approach is better than just looking into your platform of iReady, the platform of the BIMAS, or the platform of or your own school platform that shows behaviors, discipline data, and so forth? It's nice to have it, but is it really essential? I do not know. If you really have the budget, go for it. If not, think about it. You have really the data available to review it in many other ways. Now, SEL effectiveness should be measured not just with self-endorsed statements that are in many cases also attitudes or perceptions of things, but they should be measurable, observable behaviors and data that the teachers and parents can also offer information. And as I said earlier, that we should be judging the screening tools with the same rigor as we're judging any other assessment. Screening tools should be judged with the same rigor as any other assessment instrument. So be critical, demand evidence of claims, look for the technical manuals. You will find them in some places. You will have to subscribe and pay for some others to receive the technical information. And but in all cases, just demand the evidence of whatever claims the authors are making, and look and read carefully the claims and the data that support them. So I would say yes to SEL, but leave no child behind, because the SEL alone will not really address all the kids' needs. Remember that 30 to 40% of the kids who are really needing some assistance out there. So what is the BIMAS? The BIMAS is a platform that can be used at a universal level for screening and progress monitoring. You will identify behavioral concerns, strength, adaptive skills. You will detect the students who will need a further assessment. And also you will be able to look at this item number 1 in here that says universal intervention, and through universal screenings from one point to the next, you will be able to say, is this intervention working for us as a school system? Are we getting a return in our investment? Of course, that's at the tier 1. But at the tier 1, you will be able also to identify some of these kids, which brings us to the next step. So let's now have targeted interventions and individual interventions at a tier 2 and tier 3. Once we put those interventions in place, we should be able to answer the questions: are they really effective in what we do? And you should have a platform and a system that will allow you to build those progress monitoring plans and assess their behaviors with normative data and also with flexibility that will say, I can actually build a behavior and a mechanism to measure that behavior, although that behavior might not exist in the BIMAS, or it might be a behavior that was identified as a part of an IEP or part of a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation. Can I put that behavior into the platform to be monitored throughout the next few weeks, months, and with whatever frequency that might be required or be appropriate. So what is the BIMAS? 34 items, nationally normed, web-based platform. Informants could be parents, teachers, the kids themselves, if they're 12 years or older, or 6th grade and older. The platform and the form is available in English and Spanish for the kids, and also in 7 other languages. For the parents, it's English and Spanish. The platform also allows you to invite other people from outside your school system who might be providing you information about somebody's behavior, or clinicians who might be coming to your school to deliver mental health services, but you still, as a school, you want to know and monitor the effectiveness of these interventions that I know for sure you're paying dearly to be delivered from outside agencies. Other things about the BIMAS goes all the way from pre-K to 18-year-olds. We're working now on extending that a little bit to college age, but we're not there yet. Administration time, 34 questions. Teachers typically completed in about 2 minutes for maybe 80% of the kids. I would say up to 3 minutes for those kids that might be kind of wondering for some of their behaviors, and they might be a little bit more mindful and it might take them a little longer to make that kind of a judgment. The parent form is written at the 4th grade readability level, so it should not be an issue with most of the parents. Now, the unique thing about the BIMAS is that it takes the behaviors, these 34 behaviors, and allows you with a click of a button to actually see the data from 2 perspectives. You can see them from the standard perspective, the way that was initially was built, and a few years later when we add the SEL competencies on these behaviors, with a click of a button, either here for aggregate reports or over here for a classroom, you will be able to see the data. We say it provides a voice. It speaks to different audiences, to different stakeholders, mental health people, and also maybe teaching staff who would deliver these SEL lessons in their classrooms. So if you're talking about the mental health view, all you have to do, just click view reports and you get an aggregate picture by district, building, whatever the case. If you click this part on the classroom, you will be able to see all of your students in a classroom or in a school building, sort out across all of these categories, negative affect, conduct, and so forth, and you will have a way for you to build to identify who needs attention, who needs supports at either tier 1 with a little more, either tier 2 with a little bit more, or tier 3, and it doesn't have to be special education at the tier 3. Okay, now if you're gonna press the other button that says SEL competencies, you can still see now an aggregate report to the left there with all of the scales, or a classroom report, but this time with a different structure. So that's the kind of the difference. Now, I'm gonna switch next and show you some of these things that I was talking about on the BIMAS, and hopefully I'll be able to make that kind of a transition in here. All right, so this is, can you see this one? Sarah, can you confirm that?
Yes, I can see your screen, the BIMAS screen. Yep.
Okay, all right, so I went through with my login. This is a fake school. This is a fake account with some demo schools, and this is the platform now. How does the platform operate? Well, there are two major sections, or I should say 3 major sections. The first one here is the data collection and the management. This is where we build the schools, we build the staff inside those schools, and we identify the students. You have a number of options here. You can click, you can do it manually, If it's a small school, you can do it through an SFTP process, the Secure File Transfer Protocol. Your IT and our IT usually work and set up that one for nightly uploads of the data, or we use rostering services such as Clever and so forth. Once the data are in and we go to the universal assessment, we click here and we say, so what is the universal assessment? What is it going to involve? Well, we're going to create a screening period. We're going to monitor how the screening is progressing in the school system. We also have something that we call the critical item report. Remember, CDC talked about a 30 to 40% increase in suicidal thoughts. Now, the BIMAS is not a suicide screener, but it has individual items like item 24 that says, I have thoughts of hurting myself. The moment a student identifies and rates anything but never, a table has been presented and created that a mental health person can actually address this according to the district's policy on threat assessment. Once all of these things are going on, and by the way, at 1 p.m. every day that the screening is taking place, a school district administrator and the people that you identify will be able to actually get a PDF report that identifies, who are the kids who, what building and what time they finish the report and when do they they endorse that particular item and so forth. So there is going to be actionable, immediate response to behavioral screening. And that's what I say, why screen? There is a reason why we screen. And it's not just to celebrate the SEL movement. The reason we screen is to find out who really needs assistance, which will include SEL plus more and more and more and more for some kids. Then once we collect the data, we will have the data overview. And I'll actually go through here and really quickly create something for us. So I click on the, well, before I click, I have to find out if I have a period that is actually in force. Yes, I have this universal screening period that is taking place right now. So I need to go and edit it, and I'm going to take it back to maybe a couple of days until yesterday, and I will update this. Now, as you can see here, I have in this particular universal screening, I had this period that started on May the 3rd and is going to finish on May the 9th. And we said allow self-assessments, and the answer was yes. We do not recommend you do any self-assessment or any universal screening on Fridays, because this particular item that talks about thoughts of self-harm, they need to be addressed. They need to be addressed by the school. So we say, don't do it on Friday. Do it any other day of the week. Now, of course, some kids will say, well, I got the email notification on to do the screening on Thursday afternoon. I didn't finish it and I go home on Friday. I want to finish it on Friday or over the weekend. And then the person responds, and then the school district needs to be responding to that quote unquote threat. So what you do as an administrator, you go here and you say, nope, I'm on Thursday afternoon, I'm closing the BIMAS platform and I'm going to reopen it again on Monday. So if the student gets this email, even if they attempt to complete it, they will not be able to complete it. That was a requirement, a request from lots of schools around the country who said we want to have better control. At the same time, teachers can continue on and have the platform open throughout. Now, here is one that says, do you want to allow parents? We said in this case, no. I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to close this and update it so that I can go to the next stage, and I will create now a UA period. So I'm going to call this one in honor of Sarah. I'm going to call it Sarah 2023. And we're going to start the screening Sarah today, and we're going to finish it next Friday. Do you want to allow self-assessments? Yes. Do you want to allow parents? This time we will say no. I'm going to save the period here, and it's going to come back. Before it lets me go farther, it says to me, now what about that item 24 response? Well, I want to include the student ID and the name. I want to by default include all the school admins, and here is a number of people that wish to receive that report. All I have to do is just click save, and the platform is saved and saved all of these settings, and now I'm ready to go to the universal assessment. I'm going to look at the UA periods again. I'm going to open Sarah, and I'm going to see Sarah's, I'm going to see the period from 10th to the 19th, self-assessments, yes, parents, no, the teachers are by default available. So I'm going to invite now the students to do this. I'm going to click on the students, and do you want to send it district-wide? I will say, oh, no. I'm going to select a particular school like Northridge High School. I don't want all grades. I want to have, for example, the 10th graders. And some other time I will discuss the cohorts. This was something we developed on, well, I should say that. So this is something that we developed during the COVID when kids were going on Mondays and Wednesdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we were having a better control as to where to send the emails when the kids were physically present. Today, users across the country are using these concepts to manage where the kids are going to be in middle school, in what grade level, what period, what subject matter, so they can direct the emails when these kids are in certain places where they can actually open the laptops and see and administer the test. So all I have to do now is click send emails, and it's going to say, do you really want to do this? And I'll say yes. And now as an administrator, you can actually see down here what is going on with the process of the platform sending emails. I'm going to let the platform do its work, and I'm going to go down here and pretend that the emails are out, and I want to monitor and see what's going on with the rating. Well, I can go down here and I'll say I want to see the student. So I'm going to scroll down, and this you're going to get a little kind of a summary of the percentage of kids completed. But most important, you will see a list of all the students, the grade level they are, the student emails, if the email was sent, and if it was completed. So for any kind of scenarios in here where a student might say, oh, I haven't really received this email, all you have to do is just click on the student's name. It opens their record. You look into the record and you say, let's edit the information. Oh, by the way, yeah, Donnelly, you had an extra V in front of your name for some reason. So now I'm going to go and update this. So now we know that he has all of this information, and I can go back to his name and send another email invitation for this particular person. So let's go back into the UA status again, and now pick up the student once again. And here is the list of the students and when they completed the email, when they completed the rating. Same thing happens with the teachers, and same thing happens with the parents. You have a way of knowing who is completing what as part of the screening process. Now, we'll move to the critical item reports, so you will see what that is. Well, we have no data here, so I'm going to pick up an old data file in here. And this is what the report looks like when you are actually doing when reviewing the critical item report. It shows the student, it shows the ID, the grade level, and also the responses on item 24 and the negative effect. You know, like the item 24 belongs into this negative effect scale. Depression, anxieties, fears, and so forth. So I'm going to sort out, and I'm doing now an evaluation during the screening day. I'm sorting out, and I find out, oops, here are endorsements of 4. Very often I have thoughts of hurting myself. And here is a T-score, 2 standard deviations above the mean. So this is the kiddo who completed a 255 on this particular date. And if this was a recent evaluation, I know that my team, my mental health team, should be addressing this particular individual before they leave the school building. So you have that kind of an option. I'm going to scroll down here and also see now the data overview. Now here is the point where you can view this at any time during the screening process, but let's say that we finished the evaluation. So all we have to do is we have to go down here and identify the day that this thing took place. Let's say summer of 2016. This time, let's pick up an elementary school. We're gonna look into Sunnyside Elementary, all grades, all teachers, and take a look at the picture of the school. So I have BIMA Standard and BIMA SEL. Do you want to start from here? Sure. Click on View Report. Automatically, you get an aggregate report of all the things that are going on in this particular building in terms of the standard way of looking at the BIMA's behaviors. Do you want to click on the View SEL? Here is another report now, another view of the same data of the same group, same building, from a castle perspective. Well, that's a good aggregate data to make decisions, perhaps for any interventions you might have at a tier 1 level and see how they're progressing. Oh, by the way, you can actually run reports on data across different periods to see if any of these scales are actually changing. Now let's look at the all of the kids in a classroom or in the building. So here they are. You can look at it from the classical perspective, the standard perspective. You can sort them out by, let's say, a particular scale. Conduct automatically identifies the kids who are at some risk in here, or at a very high risk over here on the negative effect. I'm going to sort them out again. And this allows the SEL teams or the mental health teams, or however you call them in your building, to be able to identify the kids right away who are calling for attention, who may need assistance, who may need supports at the tier 2 or tier 3 level. So you have this data automatically available to you. And I can click here and I can see, oh, I see this student, Greg. He keeps showing up in this case with all of the scores being in the low end area of SEL skills. So now I want to know what is going on with Greg. All I have to do is just click on Greg. That opens his behavioral record, and I can see now what we have for Greg. Well, this is what we have: 3 universal screening periods evaluated by teacher. Everything was going on in here fine, and then all of a sudden the teacher is reporting issues with Greg. So Greg thinks everything is fine, but the teacher thinks that's not the case. Let's discover what exactly does the teacher want. So I click on summer of 2016, and now it opens the exact record, organize the different items from a standard perspective with a conduct, negative effect, cognition and attention, adaptive skills, and academic functioning. So this is the record. The discussion now begins with the certain behaviors identified by this particular teacher and so forth, and an intervention probably is decided for Greg. Well, when that intervention is decided, all you have to do is just go to progress monitoring and create a progress monitoring plan. So here is the plan. You provide the name of the plan, you provide any clinical notes you might wish to provide, and then here is the beauty of the BIMAS. How do you really monitor the effectiveness of whatever that intervention might be? And you have a number of options. You can use all the standard form, all 34 items, or click on it and choose a particular item with less amount of items. You can choose any of the scales that relate to the standard view or the SEL view, or you can even go farther and actually utilize some of the flexible plans, what they call custom progress monitoring plans, that you have created in another place of the platform, so that you can include them here as part of the progress monitoring. Then what you do is you set up the time, let's say weekly. You have a starting day, and then you have an ending day. And if you want to add another monitoring item other than what we just selected in here, maybe we should just select the conduct. Maybe we can have another monitoring item, and instead of just a conduct, we may have responsible decision making. And that's now the plan. So we're going to collect data on conduct, behaviors, and also on the responsible decision making. We will add the name of the student, and if it was a group intervention, we can add another student and repeat this thing, repeat the thing where we can actually identify a rater. So let's say I'm going to put this one here, the student, let's put this student. Automatically it says, do you want the student to perform assessments? Add a rater. Well, for the rater, I will put this particular individual. So you can see I'm building now a plan where I show who the student is, who the informants are going to be. I already have the frequency, and I have the actual tool that we will monitor this. And the platform takes over from here and notifies the people when something is due for them to provide information. I'm sorry, and I'll actually show you one here so you can see what it looks like from a user perspective. I will open this kiddo's Achilles data. Here is his plan. We built a plan that has a pre-test, a post-test, monthly evaluations, and weekly evaluations. And as a mental health person now, I can monitor the completion of all of this data. And I see, for example, that everything was going perfectly fine, and over here I'm missing some data. So these are the tablets that go as an email to the different individuals, to Mr. Jackson, and all he has to do is just click on this one and then finish and complete the rating. Now, if we say that this is the data for Achilles, let's review and see, find out what exactly is going on. Well, I can scroll down, I can see the different periods, and I can go down to my intervention plans. Here's the intervention. I can click on results, and automatically I have all of the responses of the different people. Now you will say to me, why red, yellow, and so forth? How did you come up with these values? Well, these are normative data. We had the question, lost his or her temper when upset, is one of the questions that was part of the standardization of the rating form. And that's why the red reflects the descriptor of the standardization data. You don't want to show this to the teacher, to a parent, but you can actually click on here and create a nice little graph, line graph that shows the progress and the various individuals who provided information. But I am going to stop here so I can leave some few minutes. Is this, Sarah, we have an hour, right? That's what's...
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop here. I'm not going to talk about other reports, but you can actually do equity analysis, you know, across the genders, race, ethnicity, and so forth. There are sample parent letters, other resources, and so forth in the platform. But that pretty much shows, I hope you got a feel of how the platform works within just that hour that I had a chance to show the work that we started back in 1998, before even RTI even was officially in business as a concept. We were looking for what works in psychotherapy. How can we measure this? And then when we nationally standardized it and we tested it with lots of clinical groups, we found out that these change sensitive items not only work for progress monitoring purposes, but also they're very powerful to identify and screen for kids who need additional supports in the school. So I'm going to stop here and maybe take some questions from the audience if you have any.
We do have one. It says, is there an estimated time frame for expanded age ranges?
Meaning above the 18 that I mentioned earlier. And if that's the case, we're working right now with different places. And if the person who wrote that has access to that population, we will invite them to be part of that normative effort that we do, that we have right now.
Excellent. And I would imagine that if people are interested in learning more about how this looks within a school system, they can reach out to you to get in contact with perhaps a school or personnel that have been using this within a district or school organization.
Absolutely, yes, yes. When we have schools, depending on their size, we have schools that are about 500, 600, or 120,000, 150,000. And there are different, you know, and I can provide the references, but they should be reaching out to you, Sarah, first, so I know that they're a group that participated here.
Great. Just to follow up on that initial question, it says we target dropouts, credit recovery, and have ages up to 22.
And we actually allow the platform, because of the age 21 for kids in special education, we allow the platform to accept students up to the age 21. Simply, we score it with the norms of the age 18 at this point. Yeah.
Okay. And we do have someone offering to participate in the norming data collection, so I will pass that information on to you after the webinar. Okay. And I think I don't see any other questions or comments coming in. So I'd like to thank you for sharing this information. Definitely timely, definitely important for school-based practitioners with all of the concerns regarding students' social emotional needs and mental health. And thank you to, thank you to our participants for attending today. If, like I said, we will send out the handouts as well as a recording in a follow-up email, and please look for us on all your future professional development needs at Riverside Insights. So thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Bodos, and have a great day, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Take care.